right away they want to jump the gun and go, hey, we want to purchase a CSP. We want to purchase some technology. They don't even understand how data is flowing or if they even have it, which is obviously how those tools are going to work.
Give it a minute. Give it a minute. Oh, I love those birds, Rob. Are you right under a tree?
No, it's just beautiful Boston.
Okay. Yeah, beautiful except for that hat. What's up, lifers, and welcome to the Daily Stand-Up with Lifetime Value, your destination for just a pinch of customer success content every day. I've got my man Rob here. Rob, do you want to say hi?
What's going on, lifers?
Wow, he sounds comparatively deflated today, doesn't he? I got my man JP here. JP, do you want to say hi?
What's up, MFers? That stands for Monday through Fridays, people that you work. Yeah.
And we've got Joe here. Joe, do you want to say hi?
How's it going, Dylan? Another former Jerseyan in the house. So
Okay. And I am your host. My name is Dylan Young. Joe, would you like to introduce yourself?
yeah, sure. My name is Joe Grande. I'm the founder of Joe Does Tech Touch.
Perfect. And Joe, you know what the deal is. We want to hear what is on your mind when it comes to customer success. You want to tell us what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, I've been having a lot of conversations lately with just other CS leaders, and data, and coming from my background in Tech Touch, it's so key to customer success, whether it comes down to segmentation, decision making, and then more importantly, like Tech Touch or digital CS. But something that's come up quite a bit, and just seeing like, hey, people not having the understanding of, one, the importance, but two, how it works. So it's something that's been top of mind for me lately.
If you had to explain how it works in 15 seconds or less, what would you say?
How it works. I would say it kind of falls into two different buckets when you're thinking about it. And I think it comes down to what data is essentially getting pushed, whether it's through like API or native integrations, whatever software that you're utilizing. Typically that's stuff that's going to be automatically updated through user engagement and so on. And then the other bucket is based on what humans are entering into, whether it's a CRM, CSP, and so on. And what comes of that too is like, okay, when you have an understanding of it, what can you rely on? Is there a actual process in place, which is all pretty important. But I would say it's the best way for 15 seconds. Hopefully that was 15.
I didn't have my timer on. I can almost guarantee it wasn't. But JP, I want to go to you. You are on a daily basis, you're talking data more and more. So what do you want to add to what Joe just said?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm talking data, but I am talking data. I always thought that's a fascinating thing, how people pronounce that. Of course, being data informed is always the goal. I think that it's a very workable and an attainable goal, but still a goal nonetheless, because I think that that's also a challenge of a lot of organizations, is getting to that good data and having people that are dedicated to working with that data. My company, Posit, they're all about data science. And one of the things that's important to know about data is that not all data is the same. You have to be able to manipulate it, look at it, contextualize it, all those sorts of things. I think that that's always the goal in my mind, is how can I be more data informed? But I think that the precursor to that is how do we get sound data so that we can work from there to make the best decisions.
Rob, in the beautiful sunshine, what do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point, Joe. I'm curious. It's an interesting observation is that when you ask companies, do you want to be data driven? 100% of companies are going to say yes, or close to it. But we all know that not all companies are. In my line of work, there are plenty of companies where that delta is pretty big between where they want to be and where they are. And I'm curious to know some practical strategies that you would recommend for folks to get a handle on their data and make informed decisions off of their data. And maybe even a company that would like a story that you've seen recently, if any come to mind, interview.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, I think it kind of also stems on, you bring up a good point, Rob, as far as like, you know, where I've seen some actual examples, I'll talk to people and they right away, they want to jump the gun and go, hey, we want to purchase a CSP. We want to purchase some technology. They don't even understand how data is flowing or if they even have it, which is obviously how those tools are going to work, in which you could automate and, you know, set up journeys, so on and so forth. what I've seen and what I've done personally is like taking a step back, trying to understand how, like who in the organization is responsible for it. So obviously every company's different, right? So you have a startup, odds are they may or may not have an engineering team, or if they are an engineer, they might be actually baked into continuing to develop the product, as well as like managing the data that might live in like a SQL query database, so on and so forth. Then you might have a mid-market company where it has it fully built out, or just some companies don't have it at all. So I think it's first learning the people who's responsible for it first and see, because they might have like essentially like a data schema built out. That's number one. Number two, the other piece of it is like obviously just getting engrossed in the product, knowing how it works, and just kind of get in the eyes of a consumer and just figure out what those touch points are. If you're interacting with a product, we'll talk about like an ESP or CSP, something along those lines, where it's like, all right, I have to connect my email. I have to go and connect whatever it is, integration, figure out all those steps. Like, great, are we tracking that information? Okay, let's figure out, where is it going? Is it going to like a data warehouse? Okay, that's great. Do we have the ability to transform it and then send it back out? So I'd say in a nutshell, start talking to the right people, figure out who's responsible for it. If there isn't, then maybe you might have to find like a contractor that has that knowledge to kind of go into the database, figure out what data they can pull out, and then start there. I think also if you're in a smaller organization that doesn't necessarily have access to, let's say, usage data, odds are you're still going to have account data, right? Like, when are they going to renew? Who's your point of contact? And those you have a little more control over, obviously. So like that information might have been disseminated from sales, or at least hopefully, but you have that more control to update it in your CRM and then manipulate it and then launch, whether it's touch points, so on and so forth, journeys on that information, and do more of a lower scale approach. That's kind of how I've done it. And also like timing is your best friend too. So if you don't have access to certain data points to get really granular, figure out where they are in their life cycle in terms of a contract standpoint, 90 days, 180, and then make hypotheses based on what should be happening in those timeframes, and then just make assumptions and test from there on out. So there's a couple ways in which you could, do that.
Joe, I apologize if you mentioned this and I missed it.
Sure.
But let's say someone isn't starting from scratch with their efforts with data. Do you have any telltale signs that you can point out to people, or symptoms maybe, where their data isn't as clean as they think it is? Anything that you'd say, like, you should be looking out for this or that, and then solve for that issue if they find that that's present?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'll give you like a specific example. So let's say if you're trying to launch and segment a book of customers, book of accounts or customers, right? Odds are your first place to look, again, if your data is clean, is, hey, Salesforce, HubSpot, whatever your CRM is, or CSP. And then you start to run a query on it, right? Odds are hopefully a rep knows their accounts or knows their customers. You could probably see by running some reports if there's missing accounts, missing contacts, or missing data values. If you start running a report and just say, hey, give me something that there's an important data value, right? Like, let's say if there's maybe every account should have at least one buyer role associated with it. Are there any accounts that don't have that? That's a problem. And then you can kind of look out for those blank values and go from there. So it takes a little bit of auditing before you do anything. And that's kind of the first telltale sign. But I would start with like a use case first and then kind of backtrack from there. I would look out for blank values. And then that also will open up the door of like, hey, are there inconsistencies in process? I've seen some examples where I've worked with, let's say, some organizations call it onboarding or launch teams, but it's still within the CS realm. Mm-hmm. And they might be implementing a new process on tracking, that qualitative data. Are they fully adopted? What's the percentage of all this information's filled out on that transfer doc? And then you could kind of go from there as far as like how trustworthy it is and so on.
Right on, Joe. Well, that's our time. I think it's super important, increasingly so as we continue down the CS path. And I think we've got 10 more people scheduled to talk about scale and the different ways you can, the many to one efforts that everybody is trying to do these days. So the first place you got to start is with that data and making sure that you're building the right foundation. So thanks so much, Joe. We hope to have you back.
Totally. Absolutely. Glad to be here. And thanks again for the time, everybody.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
You've been listening to The Daily Stand-Up by Lifetime Value. Please note that the views expressed in these conversations are attributed only to those individuals on this recording and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of their respective employers. For all inquiries, please reach out via email to Dylan@lifetimevaluemedia.com. Find us on YouTube at Lifetime Value, and find us on the socials at Lifetime Value Media. Until next time.
Hey folks, it's Dylan here. Thank you for tuning in as always. Now I've got a favor to ask of you. If you've made it this far, hopefully it means you like what we're doing with our program. So I'm asking you to please give this a like and a follow or a subscribe, and leave a comment too. Your likes and your follows and your subscriptions, they allow us to keep doing what we're doing and reach a larger audience. Your comments help us make sure that we're making the best content for you. Best of all, it's free besides a few moments of your time. Thank you again for following along, and we'll see you next time.